Hello and welcome back to Bookish. Today I wanted to continue on in my series about books by BookTubers, in which I review a book by BookTubers that I follow or that I subscribe to on BookTube, and I find and purchase their books and I review them. Last month I did Britta Bowler's The Decision, and this month I'm going to do Paroxysm of Fear Volume 1 by Todd the Librarian Wittenmeyer. So this is a book by Todd the Librarian. Many of you who follow my channel no doubt follow Todd's, and I got this collection of his short stories from Amazon. I enjoyed them. Now I will tell you up front, Todd writes horror stories, he writes sci-fi stories, he writes horror/sci-fi stories. Now these are not genres that I read a lot in, so I kind of came to this with a little bit of trepidation. I will tell you, in college I took a class in sci-fi literature, so I have some background in science fiction literature, but horror has never really been one of my genres. But I was really pleasantly surprised by these stories, by the variety of these stories and the creativity that Todd displays in these stories. So in this collection of stories you can find all kinds of things, from monsters to disappearing men, from weird religious rituals to intergalactic drug cartels, to castaways. The stories take place on swamp planets, they take place on Earth in the American South, they take place in civilizations that are different from ours in some ways, but are recognizable even though they exist on other planets. They involve ideas as varied as, the meaning of existence, religious faith, the Stockholm Syndrome, the fear of becoming nothing, your responsibility to other human beings. There's a wide variety of ideas that are covered in this collection of stories. Todd's stories show the influence of Southern storytelling, traditional ghost stories, classical sci-fi, and there's more than a little bit of evidence of the influence of Stephen King. These stories are clearly the product of an author who is steeped in science fiction, who has read deeply in both science fiction and horror, but is also a part of the Southern storytelling tradition and probably knows more than one or two ghost stories about the region in Kentucky where he lives, I'm guessing. Todd has the style here and writes in the style of a classic storyteller. Some of the stories are somewhat are told in somewhat folksy language, some are told in more formal language. My favorite story in this collection is called School of Flesh, and it's about the survivors of a sunken ship, or a ship that sinks, and how they kind of work or don't work together, with a nice supernatural twist at the end. If you ever watch Todd's channel and you listen to him often enough and then you read these stories, I'm not one of those people who can help but I sub-vocalize when I read. I hear my own voice in my head when I read, but having listened to Todd and watched a lot of his videos, when I was reading these stories, I heard Todd's voice in my head reading these stories in his very measured, almost kind of soothing voice, which actually, that kind of soothing calm actually made hearing it in my head actually made the story seem even more unsettling. I will tell you, I think this is a good collection of stories. If you're interested in sci-fi and horror, I think you could definitely find stuff in here that you're going to like, that is fun for you to read. Todd, in the initial set of stories, Todd did not put page numbers because he wanted people to read the stories kind of all in one sitting. I wasn't able to do that, but when I was able to read some of the stories one after the other, and I think I was able to read 3 or 4 of the stories in a row, it did kind of increase the impact of the stories. Anyway, I thought this was a fun collection of stories, a somewhat unsettling collection of stories, and I really admire Todd's creativity and the workings of a mind that could think of all these things. Anyway, if you've ever read Todd's short stories, or you want to, I encourage you to go out and find a copy for yourself. If you've read his stories, I look forward to seeing your comments in the comment section below, and as always, thank you for watching.